The purpose of this video is to help you know how to identify when you are looking at a scholarly article. So there's a number of ways that you can find a scholarly article, and I have other videos on how to use a database to find them. I'm going to use the database ProQuest. This is provided by Mitchell. If you are a student at any other institution, you may also have access to ProQuest. Of course, you have that access through your enrollment at Mitchell, but you might also have access to other databases like EBSCOhost or JSTOR. And usually most universities and community colleges subscribe to a number of databases. ProQuest at Mitchell is my favorite because it's going to give us the most comprehensive access to scholarly articles. So you can find them through databases, and you can also find them through Google. Sometimes Google is a little more challenging because sometimes you're met with a paywall where it will ask you to subscribe to the scholarly journal in order to get the content that you want to access, and you never need to do anything like that for the purposes of our class. So that's why I generally recommend a database through your institution for finding scholarly articles, but you can find them on Google. No matter where you find them, this video again is going to teach you how to know that you are looking at a scholarly article and not a different type of source. So one of the things that you can do when you're using a database is to make sure that you have the peer-reviewed or scholarly article filter turned on. Now in ProQuest, you'll see a checkbox that you want to make sure is checked next to the phrase peer-reviewed. What this is going to do is it's only going to give you results that come from a scholarly journal. Now, not all results that come from a scholarly journal actually qualify as a scholarly article. I'm going to go over that in just a second. But it's going to filter out anything that's definitely not going to qualify, like a magazine article, a website, a newspaper, a published report, or something like that. It won't filter out thesis and dissertation papers. These are technically not scholarly articles, even though they're written in an academic setting. The reason for that is because they don't get published in a peer-reviewed scholarly journal. They get published by the university where the individual is getting their, usually this is their master's. So it's a little, usually I'll accept thesis and dissertations as scholarly journal articles, but they technically don't qualify in quite the same way. So I've got three sources that I want to look at with y'all today. The first one is a scholarly article. So I want to spend the beginning of this video talking about what scholarly article characteristics you'll notice when you're looking at one, and just kind of how to be aware of if you may have a scholarly article or not. So the first thing that you want to check is, where was it published? Now this information here is all of our publication info, and we can check that the Children's Literature Association Quarterly is where this article was published. This is a scholarly article, or this is a scholarly journal. If you do not know if the publication is scholarly, then you can always Google it. So in order to qualify as a scholarly journal, it should be peer-reviewed. So it should be a journal that goes through the peer review process. So what you can do is you can just pop into Google and ask it, and then insert the title of the scholarly journal, is this publication peer-reviewed? If it says yes, then you know you're looking at something scholarly. If it says no, then you want to move on to a new source because that article that you're reading hasn't gone through the peer review process to get validated as effective scholarly research. Okay, so once you've checked that, then you can really lay eyes on that article and confirm that what you are looking at presents original research, because those are the two criteria that you need for a scholarly article. It has to be published in a scholarly journal, and it has to present original research. Okay, so when you're looking at something in the humanities, like I have here, original research is going to give you an interpretation or an analysis by the author of whatever their subject matter is. In this example, it's Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, the play, and what the author is doing is, as you kind of skim through these pages, is they are using secondary sources and the play itself in order to make some big claims and analysis points and interpretations about the text. And what they're doing is they're kind of like walking us through their process here. You know, we can see really quickly they're explaining how they're using other sources in order to kind of frame their perspective on this. And so you want to check for things like that. Check for original analysis when you're looking at an article that's from our humanities group. So if you're looking at something from the sciences or the social sciences, you will probably see it actually even more clearly defined. They will probably have a methods section. It will say, you know, here's my literature review. This is the work that I looked at. Here's the methods I took to complete this research. Here are my results. Here's the discussion now that I have from the results of this. So you'll see those very clearly labeled. If you're looking at something that's a little more concrete, like in psychology, biology, something along those lines. So that's something that you want to check for, because those, again, those are the two criteria: published in a scholarly journal that's been peer reviewed and presenting original research. So there's going to be some other things though that right off the bat might tell you, hey, this is possibly scholarly, or if those pieces are missing, then it's probably not scholarly at all. So a lot of the times you can tell just by the way that a source looks. Now, I recommend when you are using a database to always look at the full text PDF, because what you're seeing here is the almost like print version of it. The full text, just text version, it's a little hard to kind of check in and see, is this a scholarly article or not? Of course, you can still follow those two key rules, but now I'm kind of moving on to visuals. So you're better at assessing the visual of a scholarly article when you're looking at the actual PDF that's taken from the journal. One of the things that you'll notice is it's going to give you some information. Almost all scholarly articles give you information about the credentials of the author. Also, on the pages, they'll tell you what journal it was printed in, and what page range. You know, if you actually had the specific journal in your hands, what page range you could go to that journal, that volume and issue number, to find this direct article. So sometimes you'll see those indicators as well. Again, these are not always an indication that this is or is not a scholarly article, but what you notice is there's a big visual that's relatively consistent throughout these. So the other thing you'll notice is that I am scrolling and scrolling, and it's a lot of text. If you see an article that's relatively long, most scholarly articles are at least 15 pages long, if not 20 to 25. But most of the time it's a lot of text. If you have more data-based research, then you will probably see some charts, graphs, some numbers organized in tables, things like that. And that's okay. The only time that you're really going to see a lot of images is if the subject matter relies on showing you those images. So, you know, we don't have any of that sort of marketing scheme content here. There's no ads in a scholarly journal article. There's no images that are purely decorative here. There's not an image of the cover of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, because it's just not relevant. So we're really just looking at a huge wall of text. Another thing that you will notice that is indicative of almost every scholarly journal article is a lengthy list of sources at the end. So here I am on page 14 of this journal article, and it spans over 2 pages of sources. This is probably like 40 sources here. We even notice that there's notes where the author is kind of pausing in the middle of their paragraph and making a little tangential note there at the end for extra information. So sometimes scholarly articles have these as well. They're really more common in humanities. These are some key indicators of a scholarly article. Now I want to show you something else too. So this is an article. When I look at it in its list form, it lets me know that it is published in Geographica Helvetica, which is a scholarly journal. I can Google that, ask if it's peer-reviewed, and it will come up with yes. I've got a big chunk of text, but one of the things that you'll notice is this is only 3 pages long, and there's only 7 references at the end, which, to be honest, is a little bit more than I would expect for this type of source. So what I'm looking at here is a book review. Now, scholarly journals publish book reviews, almost all of them, at the end, where the people who curate the scholarly journal will definitely be experts in their field. They're reading books in their field, and they'll just give you some information. Like, if you subscribe to this journal, here's all the journal articles, and here's some books you might want to check out. Here's our evaluation or critique of a couple of books. So these are published in scholarly journals, but they do not qualify as scholarly articles because they're not presenting original research. This is really just evaluating and summarizing a book that this person has read. So you'll notice that it's much shorter. It's really just kind of, again, going through section by section, the content that's in the book, how it's working, what it might be emphasizing, and then just sort of like an overall summative evaluation or critique of the source. So if you see anything, and they try to be pretty clear, usually they are labeled book review or review. If you see something like that in the title, just be careful, or again, check the PDF and see if you are in the book review or the review section, because if you are, it won't qualify as a scholarly article either. Another source that you might find if you forgot or if you turned off the peer review filter in your database is just a source that would be definitely academic, but isn't qualifying as a scholarly article. So there's lots of sources out there that you'll find in databases. Just because you're doing a database search does not mean that you're going to 100% all of the time get a scholarly article. So you might find a source like this. I mean, it's great. It's long. It's got a lot of dense content to it. It's reporting on information, but you can notice a couple of things that should immediately kind of spark your red flag and say, I don't know if this is scholarly. One of them is that this is really just, again, a summary. It's not presenting original research. There's no sources that it's citing at all. And while this is not always the case, we don't have any PDF to pull from. Now, there are definitely scholarly articles that are published purely in an online format. There wouldn't be a PDF to grab, but most of the time there's going to be an associated PDF. Again, that's not always the case, but if you see there's no PDF, that should raise a red flag for you to just double check. Do you have, again, those 2 things that you must have? Is this a peer-reviewed scholarly journal? And is this source giving you original research from the author, verified by checking out just a quick information about the source, reading through, skimming a little bit, and looking for a pretty lengthy list of citations at the end, regardless of whether it's MLA, APA, or some other format. Okay, I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to kind of go over. You know the 2 main criteria for a source being scholarly, and we've kind of looked at some other things that could trip you up. So if you have any questions, please email me.